Hey everyone, welcome to today's video explainer session where we're going to talk about attribute-based access control and what that means in reality. So as part of this demo, we're going to walk through essentially just some overviews of how you've done access control in the past and how Immuta simplifies and makes that easier. So really three main things. Immuta brings together attributes of data, attributes of users, and attributes of policies to allow you to write less policies that scale across your organization. And so what I mean by that is, and instead of just using role membership, you're able to go to the user level and look at attributes of those users and then tie back business rules that say anyone who is in, let's say, finance should be able to find any data that contains credit information or any sort of financial information. And Immuta will figure that out for you through sensitive data detection or tying in through catalog solutions, allowing you to really define rules that make sense in Immuta one time and have it dynamically apply. So when we talk about attribute-based access control, we essentially mean static versus dynamic. And so in an example, if you have role-based access control today, you're able to use those roles still with Immuta, but the way that we can use them allows you to create less policy. So for example, if you had a department that was multi-region, so say you had US, Canadian, and French offices. Say you had some people in the US who are only authorized to see US data, people in Canada could only see Canadian data, and then French people could only see French data as well. The way you would do this historically is you may have already created a role for finance, a role for IT, a role for HR. And each one of these would then have another role created that was a role for IT France, IT Canada, IT US. Same thing with finance and HR. And what happens is it becomes very cumbersome very quickly. And so what Immuta allows you to do is if you've created a role that's, let's just call it Finance US or just US, you can actually use Immuta to build a policy that says, anytime we find someone that's in a group that has US in the name in this particular position, do something with that. And so what that something could be is if they select from a table that contains location information, parse out the country code from the role name and pass that into a where clause. So when my US finance people are querying a data set, they only get the US data back. And now the way you'd have to do this with role-based access control is you would have all these combinations of roles and you'd have to go in and individually grant users access to those roles while creating SQL logic behind the scenes for each combination of that role. So with Immuta, because we let you look at that one layer of the role name, you can actually say a policy that says, hey, look at this role membership. If they're in this role, grab out the country code from the role name and dynamically push a where clause filter for that user at query time. So you don't have to go create all these various policies, right? This one policy in Immuta now will dynamically figure out who the user is and apply the policy. And so when we say ABAC, we don't just mean attributes at the user level. We mean dynamic versus static, which really reduces the number of policies you'll have to build with our platform. And so the second example we could use here is that instead of using roles to control this, what we would find typically is users already have a home office country on their user profile. So when you get onboarded in your organization, there's certain things that get set about you. Typically, it's what department you're in, your phone number, your email address, your home office location, the location country code that you're in. And so in this particular example, you don't even have to go create roles with Immuta. You could just say, hey, look at this user's profile. If it says they're in a home country location of US, only see US data. If they're in a location of France, they only see French data. And there's no requirement to go talk to your Active Directory or identity management system teams to have them create these roles. They're already there. Users in the business can go into Immuta, build a policy that's easy to understand without having to engage with these different groups or create duplicate effort. And so really that's the goal with Immuta, is that we want to simplify and scale your access controls, freeing up your time to spend things on higher value tasks, and also making security something that's easy to understand. If you think about that traditional role-based approach, you're creating all these different roles. Very likely you're not going in and auditing and deleting those roles if they become obsolete. And as people change, your organization has more complex rules created inside the organization. Maintaining all of these roles and memberships and custom SQL logic and custom policy logic becomes a full-time job for a lot of people. With Immuta, we get rid of all that complexity, allowing you to distribute your data stewardship and policy authoring across the business. So I hope you found this brief explainer session useful. Check out the link of the video for some more details on all the different things I touched on here today, as well as some diagrams. Thanks so much for watching.